Your upstairs room shouldn't feel this hot. Not when the AC is running. Not when the thermostat says the house is cool. And definitely not at night. But somehow, the moment you walk upstairs, everything changes. The air feels heavier, warmer, almost trapped. Downstairs feels normal. Upstairs feels unbearable. And no matter how low you set the thermostat, that heat never really leaves. Now most people blame the air conditioner. They think it's weak, undersized, failing. So they buy stronger fans, portable AC units, blackout curtains, even completely new HVAC systems. Thousands of dollars. Same heat. Because the real problem usually isn't the AC. It's the ceiling. And most homeowners never realize that until it's too late. Because during summer, your roof becomes one of the hottest surfaces on your entire property. Not warm, dangerously hot. On a 95-degree day, most roofs reach temperatures above 150 degrees. That's hotter than many ovens. And all of that heat sits directly above your upstairs rooms. Hour after hour, radiating downward, into the attic, into the ceiling, into the walls, into the air around you. Your AC isn't cooling the room anymore. It's fighting stored solar energy. And solar heat never stops building while the sun keeps hitting the roof. Now here's the crazy part. Most homes are designed to absorb heat, not reject it. Dark shingles, dark roofing, heat-trapping materials, minimal reflective surfaces. Everything built to soak up sunlight like a giant battery. And once that heat enters the structure, your upstairs rooms pay the price all evening long. That's why bedrooms stay hot after sunset. The roof already absorbed the energy earlier. Now the house is releasing it slowly back downward. Like delayed sunlight. Now here's where things get interesting. Long before modern air conditioning existed, people already understood this problem, especially in desert climates, Mediterranean villages, farming communities, hot regions where surviving summer heat mattered. And they discovered something surprisingly simple. White mineral powder. Not electronics. Not compressors. Not expensive cooling systems. Powder. Because bright white surfaces behave differently under sunlight. They reflect heat, instead of absorbing it. That's the secret. And one cheap mineral changed the temperature inside entire buildings for centuries. Lime. A simple white mineral powder still sitting inside hardware stores today. Forgotten. And surprisingly effective. Villages across Greece, North Africa, Mexico, even parts of the Middle East, covered homes in bright white mineral coatings for one reason. Heat control. Because white surfaces reject enormous amounts of solar radiation before it can enter walls and ceilings. That's why white buildings in hot climates feel noticeably cooler. Not mentally. Physically. Researchers studying reflective surfaces discovered that white mineral coatings can dramatically reduce surface temperatures under direct sunlight. Sometimes by over 20 degrees. And once less heat enters the structure, rooms below stay cooler naturally. Now think about this for a second. Modern roofs absorb sunlight all day long. Then homeowners spend huge amounts of electricity trying to remove that heat afterward. That's backwards. And older builders understood that. They focused on preventing heat absorption first. Because once heat enters the structure, removing it becomes expensive. Now here's where upstairs rooms suffer the most. They sit closest to the attic, closest to the roof, closest to the heat source itself. That's why downstairs feels manageable, while upstairs feels suffocating. The ceiling itself becomes warm, and once ceilings radiate heat downward, the room slowly turns into a thermal trap. Now here's something most people never realize. Your AC can cool air, but it cannot instantly cool overheated walls and ceilings. That's why some rooms still feel warm even while cold air is blowing. The structure itself is holding heat. Now imagine touching a wall that sat under sunlight all afternoon. Even after sunset, it still feels warm. That stored thermal energy matters more than most people think. Because radiant heat feels different than air temperature. That's why some upstairs rooms feel heavy, The surfaces themselves are radiating warmth continuously. Now here's where this $2 powder becomes interesting. Hydrated lime. One of the oldest reflective building materials in human history. When mixed into reflective coatings, it creates a bright surface capable of bouncing sunlight away before thermal buildup happens. Not cooling afterward, preventing heat from entering in the first place. Huge difference. Now imagine two identical homes. Same weather, same sunlight, same AC system, but one roof absorbs massive solar heat, and the other reflects much of it away. The difference upstairs feels dramatic, not because one AC is stronger, because one structure absorbed less heat from the beginning. Now here's the strange part. Modern cooling systems usually focus only on air temperature, but older passive cooling systems focused on heat behavior itself. And that changes everything, because once heat absorption drops, the entire structure behaves differently. Attics stay cooler, ceilings stay cooler, walls absorb less warmth, and suddenly, the upstairs room stops fighting against cooling. Now here's where things become even more interesting. NASA uses reflective white coatings on spacecraft for the exact same reason. Not decoration, heat control. Because sunlight carries enormous thermal energy, and reflective surfaces dramatically reduce absorption. The same principle ancient builders discovered centuries ago. Physics never changed. Only modern construction trends did. Now imagine walking into your upstairs bedroom during late afternoon. Normally, the ceiling feels warm, the air feels trapped, the room feels stale, even with the AC running. But after reducing heat absorption, everything changes. The air feels lighter, more stable, less oppressive, not freezing, not artificial, just balanced. Now here's another hidden reason upstairs rooms stay hot. Attics. Because attics trap enormous amounts of heat during summer, sometimes exceeding 140 degrees. That trapped heat slowly radiates downward for hours, especially after sunset. That's why upstairs bedrooms often feel hottest at night. The attic is releasing stored solar energy back into the room. Now imagine reducing attic heat itself. Suddenly, everything below it changes too. The ceiling cools faster. The room stabilizes faster. The AC cycles shorter. And your electric bill starts dropping without changing the thermostat constantly. Now here's the part utility companies quietly benefit from. The hotter your structure becomes, the harder your cooling system works. Longer run times, higher electricity demand, higher bills. Every extra degree trapped inside walls and ceilings increases cooling load dramatically. Now think about how many homes absorb solar heat all day, then spend the entire evening paying electricity to fight it. Millions. That's why summer electric bills explode. Not just because of outdoor temperature, because the structure itself becomes a giant heat battery. Now here's where older architecture becomes fascinating. Before air conditioning existed, homes in hot climates were designed around heat rejection. White surfaces, tall ceilings, cross ventilation, reflective materials, shaded walls. Because once heat enters the structure, comfort becomes difficult, and old builders understood this deeply. Now modern homes often depend almost entirely on mechanical cooling. And once passive cooling design disappeared, upstairs heat became a massive hidden problem inside millions of homes. Now here's another thing people overlook. Roof color. Dark roofs absorb dramatically more heat than reflective surfaces. Researchers using thermal cameras found black roofing materials reaching extreme temperatures under summer sunlight. Meanwhile, reflective white surfaces stayed dramatically cooler under the exact same conditions. That difference matters enormously, because every degree prevented at the roof reduces heat entering the rooms below. Now imagine preventing even part of that thermal buildup. The entire upstairs changes. Now here's another hidden issue. Insulation slows heat transfer, but it does not stop heat absorption completely. So if your attic becomes extremely hot, that thermal pressure still builds above the ceiling for hours. That's why some upstairs bedrooms stay warm long after sunset. The structure absorbed too much heat earlier in the day. Now here's where airflow matters too. Once ceilings absorb less thermal energy, fans become more effective. Rooms stabilize faster. Cool air circulates easier. Everything improves together because the room itself stops generating radiant warmth. Now think about this. Most people try solving upstairs heat by adding more cooling, stronger AC, lower thermostat, portable units, extra fans. Meanwhile, the roof keeps absorbing enormous amounts of sunlight every afternoon. Quietly, constantly. That's the real problem. Now here's the ironic part. Human beings solved passive cooling centuries ago. Long before electricity. Long before compressors. Long before smart thermostats. But somehow, modern homeowners became completely dependent on machines to solve problems architecture used to prevent naturally. And every summer, the cycle repeats. Higher bills, longer AC runtimes, hot bedrooms, sleepless nights. Meanwhile, the roof keeps storing thermal energy directly above everything. Now here's where things become even stranger. Some traditional whitewashed buildings in Mediterranean regions maintained indoor temperatures dramatically lower than surrounding outdoor air. Without compressors, without refrigerant, without electricity. Because reducing heat absorption changes the entire thermal behavior of the structure. Less stored heat, less radiant warmth, less thermal buildup. Everything stabilizes naturally. Now compare that to modern suburban homes. Dark shingles, heat-trapping attics, minimal reflective surfaces, heavy dependence on mechanical cooling. And every year, energy bills climb higher. Now here's another thing homeowners rarely notice. Upstairs rooms often become hottest near evening, not midday, because stored roof heat releases slowly over time. That's why the room feels almost charged with warmth late at night. The roof absorbed energy hours earlier. Now your ceiling is releasing it downward continuously. Now imagine reducing that stored energy before it builds. Huge difference. Now here's something researchers discovered during urban heat studies. Entire neighborhoods become hotter because dark roofs and surfaces continuously absorb and radiate thermal energy. Concrete, asphalt, dark roofing, everything storing sunlight. That's why cities often feel dramatically hotter than nearby rural areas. Stored heat everywhere. Now imagine the opposite. Reflective surfaces, lower thermal absorption, less radiant heat. Cooler structures. Simple physics. Now here's another hidden reason upstairs rooms feel uncomfortable. Humidity. Warm stagnant air holds moisture differently. That's why some upstairs bedrooms feel heavy even when the thermostat technically reads normal. The room isn't just warm. It's thermally overloaded. Now think about how many people sleep badly during summer. Sweating. Restless. Constantly adjusting the thermostat. Blaming the AC, when the real problem is often trapped radiant heat above the ceiling itself. Now here's where this simple powder becomes powerful. Not because it magically creates cold air, because it reduces heat absorption before the structure stores it. That's the hidden advantage. Now imagine walking upstairs during extreme summer heat, and instead of that trapped heavy warmth, the room feels stable, balanced, comfortable. The ceiling isn't radiating heat downward. The air feels lighter. The AC finally feels effective again. Not because it became stronger, because the room stopped absorbing so much heat in the first place. That's the real difference. Now to be clear, this isn't magic. Climate matters. Ventilation matters. Humidity matters. Insulation matters. Airflow matters. But reducing heat absorption? That changes far more than most homeowners realize. Especially upstairs. Especially during brutal summer heat waves. Now here's the truth utility companies never advertise. Cooling a house isn't just about producing cold air. It's about controlling heat before it enters the structure.